Hello there, brothers and sisters in Christ. God bless each and every single one of you at his Hunter's Point, here with another video. I do hope and pray that each of you all watching me right now are having a good Wednesday night, a very late Wednesday night. So far, wherever you all are at, I do hope and pray that each of you are all doing well. It's going to be a little bit of a different video. Those of you who have followed my channel for any length of time, you know that occasionally I'll do one of these talking head videos where, it's unplanned, you know, unscripted. I mean, I never script my videos, but you all know that I typically have a style, a way that I do things. I kind of follow a bullet point structure of, what I want to hit in what order I want to hit it. This way I ensure that the appropriate message is being conveyed depending on what the video is. But occasionally, I like to do videos where I just kind of turn on the camera and just talk, right? Without any sort of a real plan. Whatever comes out is just what comes out. And if you're able to take anything from this video, maybe you're able to relate to it in some way. Yeah, I pray that you're able to get something positive out of this video. But I've just felt the need to kind of turn on the camera and just talk. Today was not the best day for me. You know, uh, it started out really good. Of course, it's work related, right? But, I ended up having what I thought was one of the best shifts I'd ever worked. I mean, it was extremely productive. I got a lot of stuff baked off for the floor. For those of you who don't know, I am the bakery clerk at my local grocery store. So it's my job to ensure that breads and desserts and cookies, whatever it is baked off and put on the floor for customers to buy. And, it was an extremely productive day today, and it started out positive because of that. But I noticed that about 10 to 15 minutes before my shift ended, I just started getting really delirious. Like I was kind of out of it. Like even though I was there, I wasn't mentally present. I was so exhausted, like without even realizing it, to the point where it started to kind of affect me cognitively as far as, getting the remainder of everything done. But even like as far as how I left today, I had did something that I had never done before. And yeah, I was very embarrassed by it. It's probably the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me in recent memory. Like I was really, really pissed at myself for it. I'm still upset at myself. But, as I went to leave the store, right, I got everything that I needed to get done. I clocked out. I got the lunch that I had paid for earlier in the day, and I got myself ready to get out of there. Yeah, I got a 24 pack of soda, and I went to the checkout line to start getting everything checked out for the day. Like I ended up getting soda, and then I ended up getting, like snacks or whatever the case is. I ended up getting like chocolate snacks. But as I went through the line, like I remember talking to the man. I wouldn't call him a buddy. I'm very careful to differentiate between coworkers and friends. I don't think it's healthy to mix the two. That's a conversation for another time. But good, solid kid, someone I enjoy talking to when I'm there. I ended up going through the line, and I forgot to enter my card into the debit card machine. And it's like I was going to walk out of there without paying. And obviously not intentionally, but I was so out of it that as I went through the line and kind of got caught up in talking to him, and I wasn't even fully there mentally anyway, I was extremely tired and clearly delirious from the day's events, that I had no idea until he pointed it out to me that I didn't even put my debit card into the machine to pay for it. It's like I've never done that before in my entire life. I have never almost forgotten to pay for something, right? And for me, the fact that that had never happened to me before in my entire life, and anyone who knows me knows that I am an extreme perfectionist and I am extremely hard on myself as a result, like that really threw a wrench in what had been a really good day for me up until that point. Like today, largely was a really great day. It was a very productive shift. I got a lot done. I got it done in a relatively timely manner. And it just ended up being a good day. No drama, not getting into needless arguments with people. Everyone was there to work. Well, I say everyone. We had a couple of call ins, so we were extremely short staffed. It was just me and my grandmother. It was the two of us pretty much from 10 o'clock until about 2 o'clock. But, I've never had that happen. I kind of live almost a bit of a robotic life, right? Like I have my routine. I go to work. Usually I work from 9 to 5:30, such as, in the case of today. And I get my lunch during the day. I enjoy my lunch, I enjoy my break, and then when it's time to go home, I buy anything if I need to and I go home. And just the fact that I almost forgot to pay, like obviously people know that I would never intentionally steal, but just the fact that that even happened, I'm just so angry at myself. You know, Eh, I know that, in the case of most people, you know, they say that you are your own worst enemy. And I believe that that's definitely the case for me. I'm very, very hard on myself because I hold myself to a higher standard, I think. Like, I have a standard that I work very hard to uphold. And when I feel like I've dropped the ball, like, I get, I'm human, right? I'm going to make mistakes. But I hate it when I make dumb mistakes, you know? And I felt that that mistake today was a dumb mistake. Like that's something I had never done in my life. So obviously I would never intentionally do. That just isn't for me personally. Like I don't want to say I take pride because I don't like that word pride, but you know, I work very, very hard to uphold a personal code of conduct in my life. Like I generally try to treat everybody around me with respect, like the way I would like to be treated. I don't steal. I don't intentionally ever try to make life harder for other people. I don't go up to people and insult them. Like, I don't engage in stuff like that. And so the fact that I almost walked out of there without paying, like, I know that to most of you watching it, that probably isn't a big deal. Um, but just for me, it's a big deal because I had never done that before. It's something I would never do intentionally. It was just irritating I did that. It's like, and it's pure irritation of myself. Like, how could you forget? Like I enter my debit card all the time. I have my wallet in my front pocket. Like it's within, centimeters of my hand, right? Like, how could I forget that? That's crazy to me. Just how delirious, how out of it I was. And really, I don't remember much from the last 15 minutes of my shift. And I didn't sleep well the night prior, and then kind of having everything thrown on me today as far as the short staffed nature. Yeah, clearly I didn't get enough rest because for me to almost do that, it's kind of got me out of sorts and threw a wrench into what was a really, really good day. And so, I come on here because kind of, feeling everything that I'm feeling going through today, that dumb mistake on my part. Like, I've noticed that I'm having more and more instances where, you know, I think I'm having a good day, and then something happens that kind of throws a wrench in that. It's like every time that I think things are going really, really great, something happens that causes it to end on a sour note of sorts. And, I'd be curious to hear how many of you are maybe going through the same thing. Like, life's hitting you with curveballs, whether it's something, you know, not too serious, but, if it's serious to you, it's serious. That's kind of how I view it. But then, you may have, family members who are going through health problems. Like every time you think that everything's going good, something happens that kind of knocks that down a peg or two. And, just as I go through these things, everything that I've described over the last year, going through the loss of a friendship, I mean, really the loss of two friendships, trying to adjust to life after graduating college, getting a handle on working the increased workload I've been working the past few months, just trying to adjust, to life as a young adult, and you get hit with curveballs. You know, just know, and this is another one of those messages that I'll share with everyone watching. You know, I know that I am very likely not alone in everything that I've just shared, but I want you all to know that you're not alone either. Life's hard, I'll tell you. And it seems that life is harder now than it's ever been. It's every time that you think that, nothing could possibly go wrong, something goes wrong. And I think really the key, something that I've been trying to slowly, refigure out in my life, is how to not really have any kind of expectations, and to figure out how to be prepared for the possibility of things going wrong, right? Like, it's important to understand that life isn't easy. It's very hard, but it can always be worse. I guess that's something that I've had to think of a lot, just as I watch, my family. We're going through the loss of a family friend. I wasn't particularly close with him, um, and that's not speaking bad or anything. I just, I never hung around him, right? I was never really close with him the way that, my sister and my mom and my grandma, the way that they were. But we're kind of going through the loss of a family friend of over 40 years. And yeah, it's stuff like that that kind of puts it into perspective. Like, maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself. Like, you know, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes dumb mistakes. Like, everyone has an embarrassing story, right? I don't make mistakes often, and I certainly don't put myself in embarrassing situations often. But today was just one of those instances where it was a very embarrassing moment. I mean, the fact that I did that in front of people, it it made me look a way that, yeah, I just felt it made me look horrible. And it's likely just me thinking that of myself, because I am my own harshest critic. But yeah, I hated the fact that I almost did that. Like, I hated the fact that it took him saying that 3 times for me to register. Oh, I didn't put my card in the machine. That is how out of it I was. And I just think that, you know, perhaps we're all going through at least some semblance of exhaustion, you know, whether it be spiritual exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, and even physical exhaustion. Like, it's a very, very tiring existence at times. And I think it's all about finding solace in the things that mean the most to you, and to remember that you're not alone. That everyone has run into situations like that. Everyone has an embarrassing story to tell. Everyone's made mistakes, even, mistakes that could be perceived as, dumb mistakes, right? It's happened to everybody. Like, when I talked to the guy that I'd mentioned, I'm not going to say his name, but, he's someone who I enjoy talking to when I'm there, but, he was the cashier and manager on duty. I ended up calling the store not too long after, like probably within 30 minutes of the incident. I called up there and asked to speak to him personally just because I felt so horrible about just, making his job harder than it needed to be, and for giving off the kind of appearance that I felt like I did, for being so out of it. And to his credit, he was great. And I think this is how I know that I'm just being too hard on myself. He told me, Hunter, I've done it many times. He's like, I have been many different places, and I'll just up and try to leave without paying, without even realizing it. He's like, sometimes you just kind of get out of it. You forget. It happens to the best of us. And I think that those words could apply to really any kind of, you know, harmless mistake that's made. Um, any embarrassing story, it happens to the best of us. So perhaps we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. You know, we're not alone. This life's hard enough as it is. We don't need to be beating ourselves up on top of that. And I just thought that those were wise words from this young man. And it really helped kind of talk me down. I'm still upset at myself that that happened, that I didn't pay more attention like I normally would. I hold myself to a higher standard, so when I make mess ups like that, they tend to bother me more than maybe they would most people. Perhaps that's just something I need to work on, but he definitely talked me off a bit of like a mental uh, rough spot. He talked me out of just beating myself up more and more. But I'd be curious to hear how many of you, perhaps it's a different situation, how many of you have kind of gone through things similar. Maybe you're going through something similar right now where, you're beating yourself up over things, and it's hard to not do that, but I know that we shouldn't either. And perhaps that's just where giving it over to God comes into place. Perhaps that's where that is most relevant. It's just kind of handing everything over to the Lord, allowing Him to be fully in control and to just guide you. That's something, as a bit of a control freak, that is something that I've struggled with. I'm used to being, in control. I'm used to having a set routine of how I do things, what I do, when I do them. So believe me when I say I know it can be tough, but, you know, we can't beat ourselves up. And I'm speaking to myself here just as much as I'm speaking to anybody else. I know that this video's all over the place, but that's the point of this video, is to just kind of get everything off my chest, and hopefully you're able to take something away from this video. Maybe it'll help you in some way with whatever situations you may be going through. But, everyone has a story to tell. Everybody has an embarrassing moment to reflect upon. Everyone's made mistakes. We're human. So, keep that in mind. When I think about that more and more, and especially the conversation that I had with, that young man, it really helped kind of put that into perspective for me again. And it helped me kind of calm down after that because I was having such a good day until then. And that just threw a wrench in all of it where it completely soured my mood, where, I ended up kind of looking at today as a bad day because of that little mess up on my part. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and kind of work this video towards a close before I ramble more and more. I'm going to pull up eSword, which is my online digital Bible program, and we're going to go to the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 1 through 4. It reads like this: Moreover, brethren, I declare unto you the gospel, which I preached unto you, which also ye have received, and wherein ye stand, by which also ye are saved, if ye keep in memory what I preached unto you, unless ye have believed in vain. Here's the emphasized portion: For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received, how that Christ died for our sins, according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day, according to the Scriptures. That is, again, the gospel, the good news, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 to 4. That is how you are saved, if you believe that in your heart alone. Right? It has nothing to do with your ability to follow commandments or, obey ordinances. How fitting that I make a video like this. It's not about being perfect. Perhaps that's the true message after all. It is about what Jesus Christ did for us on the cross of Calvary. And all you have to do is believe in him. That's it. It's not anything complicated. You just have to believe in the finished work of Christ. I'm going to read John 3, verses 16 through 18, as I believe they tie in beautifully with the saving gospel message. It says, For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Jesus did it all. All you have to do is believe in him. I'm going to finish here by reading Ephesians 2, verse 8 and 9, two of my all-time favorite verses throughout all of Scripture. And it reads as follows: For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. It really is that simple. Grace is God's unmerited favor, which God has offered to us as the free gift of salvation. We accept and receive that free gift once and for all, past, present, and future, by faith alone, in the finished redemptive work of Jesus Christ alone. I pray this video helps somebody. I know that I have not been as active on this channel as I had been in the past. Just like those of you watching, I have things that I'm going through, and sometimes you just have to rest. You have to take time to deal with things, and then when the time's right, you come back. And I have always been a believer in the idea that I would rather do videos as the Lord's leading me to do them, rather than to just try to force a video, right? I feel like the worst thing that I could do is come on here when I'm not feeling led to in any way. Like, I am never gonna just do a video for the sake of doing a video. It needs to be the right time, the right moment, the right subject. It needs to be right. It would be really easy for me to be like so many other YouTube channels. And I'm not even talking, in the Christian space. I'm talking YouTube in general, right? There's so many people that will just make as many videos as possible just for the sake of making them, to try to go viral, and to try to get that YouTube ad money. This channel isn't even monetized, right? I do this for the love of the game, right? I do this because I want the message to get out there, and I'm never going to try to force things. It is a lot better to be genuine than to be fake. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind too. So that's where I'm going to leave you all off at for this video. I will see you all in the next video, whenever it is, should the Lord tarry his coming. Otherwise, God bless y'all. All right, take care.